let's go ahead. Let's hop into our animated. So, Kevin, I want to hear what yours is.
Okay. Man, there was a lot. We've talked about, the Jedi Knight episode, right? Like that's one of the big ones that's up there.
Yeah.
Uh Man, the Siege of Mandalore, in the last season of the Clone Wars. I mean, gosh, that is
Yep.
such and then the end of the Clone Wars, right? With Ahsoka fighting through the cruiser, like all of that. That shot at the
That
end,
last
like
scene.
so good.
Oh.
So but I really I really ended up on something that was a little bit different. Just I liked it for different reasons. Like it wasn't necessarily the action or but it was something that I felt like just really ties in with Star Wars. And so it's actually one of the things I really really like is it's after Kanan dies, right? And we have Ezra
Mhm.
just kind of like he's like on the verge of giving up, right? Like he's kind of lost. He's followed these loath wolves into this random place and he has no idea where he is or where to go. And that's when this giant loath wolf named Dune
Yeah.
comes up, right?
Yep.
And so he has this conversation with this loath wolf who speaks very briefly in a few words. But I love the idea, within. So, like, Kanan Jarrus, we know that there's this saying with the Jedi, there's no death, there's the Force, right? We see that with Force Ghost throughout all the stuff. Luke says it in the sequel trilogy, right? He says no one's ever really truly gone.
He does say
Um,
that.
he does say that, and so I love that this scene really kind of embodies that in a different way because Kanan Jarrus doesn't become a Force Ghost, right? Like he is really truly gone, right?
The Force.
He is one with the Force now, right? Like the
But he
idea
can
that as you
talk
join
still.
well, the idea that as you join the Force, like you're no longer who you were, right? You just kind of go back to being part of this cosmic force they call it or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I really love the idea though, this kind of tying in with the idea that there is no death, there is the Force, that even as Kanan passes on, there's some part of him that affects the Force, right? Like the idea that he wanted to protect and teach and guide Ezra, like even the fact that he no longer exists, there's a part of that in the Force now that doesn't just that actually seeks Ezra out. Because like in that scene, he's not meditating, like he's not really in a point of calm, but really the Force seeks him out with this wolf. Um, and so I really just like that image that in the midst of Kanan passing on, like his character, his virtue, the good aspects of him, like they're still reflected in the Force. Like this
Mhm.
bigger picture of the Force that's not him anymore, but it's still a part of him that is able to affect Ezra. I think that's such a cool scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's just a lot in there, and I like that we have this other picture other than Force Ghost, right? Our idea of people existing beyond death is primarily Force Ghost.
Mhm.
So I love that we get a different picture of someone who's really truly moved on, but joining the Force seems to affect the Force as a whole, right? And its
Yeah.
ability then to
A ripple
affect.
or something.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I like that scene because it's kind of a different take on the idea of joining the Force and death not being the kind of the final thing.
Yeah.
So.
Now, what do you think? What do you think about Kanan's voice being in Rise of Skywalker at the end?
My
That,
honest answer?
yeah, I think honestly, I think it's kind of cool, but
Oh, I like it. No, I love it. But I do think it was a product of, hey, let's just throw in all these Jedi voices that we can.
well, yeah,
Um, I don't think from his. I mean, a lot of them, it doesn't necessarily make sense that they're speaking in that moment, right?
yeah,
Because the idea is that when a Jedi passes on and becomes one with the Force, they're no longer an individual, right? They just
yeah,
kind of return to being part of that larger picture of life and the Force. And so, the ones that stay behind, they're actually kind of refusing to become one with the Force at the time, at least temporarily. So I, it doesn't. I like it. It doesn't make sense, but I like it. So
yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
I just like it because now, again, not
It's a cool
my
scene.
favorite movie. It's my
No.
least favorite movie, but I think it's cool that like for Kanan specifically. I mean, I know like kind of what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
probably a better payoff that he doesn't, but for Kanan specifically, like he fought in Rebels against the Empire this whole time, and so he finally gets like one last say against the Empire. I thought that was kind of cool, just
No, I
for
think it's
him
great that he
personally.
got
But
included for sure.
yeah,
So,
just a side note there. I wanted to know what you thought about it, but
that's fair.
mine is in Rebels again. I think Rebels is like it's outside of the original 6 films, it's the best Star Wars story, start to finish. It's so good. I mean, it spurs on the Ahsoka series, which is just Rebels season 5. Like it's very good. And so, Twilight of the Apprentice, when Ahsoka is fighting Vader, that was my actual introduction to Rebels. So I was not into animated Star Wars at all. And then I saw it on now this is a really long time ago because when did that, was that like 2015 when that episode happened or something like that? It was season 2, right?
That's season 2.
It's 3 at the latest. 3? So if it's season 3, that would have been 2016. Either way, like it's pretty late out. Like it's a long time ago. So I saw it on YouTube or something, just, flipping through, scrolling. And I was like, what on earth is this from? Like where you see this, Anakin with his, half cut, and you hear him talking through Vader. And I was familiar with Ahsoka at least. So I was like, what is this? So I watch it and then, end up, I don't know if it was on Netflix at the time or something, but like I watched the whole thing. It was so good. And so just that scene in and of itself got me into, oh, well, what is Ahsoka's story? So then I have to kind of do some digging on that. And then just a lot to that, right? Like you learn that, or me personally, I learn, oh, this is Anakin's apprentice, and you have these stories with him. Like kind of just read the Wikipedia, learning all this. But at the same time, I know Anakin's fall to the dark side. So you kind of get that aspect of he's Vader in there. And it's a really cool fight scene in and of itself, that very unique Rebels animation that they have. But then also it's Anakin reckoning with Vader and vice versa. So I thought that was just a very cool scene that kind of sentimentally pulled me into animated Star Wars. So I think that one probably
that's cool.
Has a hold on me there because I don't know that I would have watched animated Star Wars without this happening. I mean, I hadn't yet because Clone Wars, cool. I did not like the first season of Clone Wars. I've watched it a few times, trying to get going from there, and I just can't do it. But that got me into Rebels, and then Rebels turned into one of my, favorite pieces of Star Wars out there. So sentimentally, that's it for me.
Yeah, it feels very Star Wars. The show does, but no, that is really cool. That's kind of like it grabbed your attention and got you into it. So I can see how that would be like a favorite scene. And it is a really cool scene. We see a bit of Ahsoka's this time I'll stay, right? Like it's a pretty cool moment where she's like, I'm not gonna abandon you again. Yes, that is a good scene. That one's up there too.
And I had to do some digging to figure out what that even meant. No clue.
Yeah.
But just looking at it from
at the time, we didn't even really have finality on that, right? We know she had walked away from the Order, but
we just knew she left.
Clone Wars didn't exist at that point. So.
It didn't exist for a few more years from there. Yeah. No, that's true too. But that whole episode actually is it's a 2-part, right? Because they're going through what planet, or the Malachor? Is that right? Is that where they are? Yeah. So that whole little arc, if you want to call it, is just really good in general, in my opinion. So I like it.
Maul in there, who's really interesting in Rebels. Like he's got a really cool arc. So it is good.
Yeah, he gets some legs.
That's when Kanan gets blinded.
Yeah, he gets blinded by Maul. Yeah,
so a lot happens there.
I think do the Inquisitors do the helicopter spinning thing on that episode too that everybody hates?
There. Yeah, because it makes sense, right?
I think that's cool.
Sure.
But people that hate Rebels animation, I'm sure do not like that, because that episode and that duel is like the pinnacle of Rebels animation, where it's like almost blurring together.
Yeah, it is different.
But the soundtrack is good as well. The score when they're fighting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's real good.
It's kind of similar to when Obi-Wan and Vader fight in Kenobi as well. It's kind of got those same vibes to it, but we'll touch on that in a few minutes, I suppose. Did you have any runner-ups for yours?
I mean, Jedi Knight's.
You don't have to go into detail, but
no, Jedi Knight's always a big runner-up. Yeah, I do. I mean, the World Between Worlds and Rebels. I mean, that's an awesome scene. I love that one. And then Clone Wars, just that sequence at the end with Ahsoka and Rex.
Yeah,
that's hard to beat too. So those were all definitely up there. Ultimately, I settled on the ones just because it was a little bit different, and I like it.
I ran through a few. So the finale of Rebels, Jedi Knight, and Rebels. I thought that would be cliche, though. We kind of talked about that. And then, so those two. The Rebels finale is very good. Like with really the epilogue and everything, it's good. No,
it is really good.
Jedi Knight, of course, is one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars entertainment ever produced. But then also in the Bad Batch, I really like the season 2 finale, like with Tech and that line, like, when do we ever follow orders? Yeah. I thought that was a good payoff there.
That was a bright spot in a otherwise ho-hum season.
Very ho-hum. Ahsoka versus Maul is incredible in the Clone Wars. That's so good.
It's a great fight.
And
they brought Ray Park back to the motion capture for that.
Yes, he's in like all the
super cool.
The dots and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
He still can do it. And then the last one would have been kind of different. Like all these are just like, oh, what could it be? I really like that episode in Tales of the Jedi with Dooku where he does turn and fight Seattle.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, that's just immediately after the Phantom Menace. And so I thought that was pretty cool as well.
I mean, yeah, when you branch out, like there's a lot of really good stuff to choose from in the animated realm. Even not as a whole, but like even some of the Vision stuff is like really, really good.
Oh yeah, like the one with the wedding.
Excellent, yeah. And so there's a lot of good stuff in the animation realm to choose from. So
it is true. It's where Star Wars shines nowadays. Sometimes.
Yeah, it's doing well.
Yep. So
depending on who you ask, I guess.
That is true. That is true.